Richard II today, so it's going to be a little sad, but it's a beautiful speech. It's like a really beautiful, sad speech.
I like that.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite speeches, actually, in all of Shakespeare, because I think the imagery in it is just incredible. Hello,
Welcome.
Sonata.
Welcome.
That sounds like a little nice self-care Sunday.
Sounds fantastic. I think both Steph and I need that, honestly.
I need that so I can wash out my hair. I put a better color in it and wash it out. Great point, Last Limey. Richard II doesn't have much that isn't sad. So hello, Steve. Thanks everyone for hopping in.
Yeah.
Oh, I hope y'all have a fun little date night.
That's awesome. So is it there's a bunch of Richard plays, or there's a bunch of Henry plays, or there's both?
There are more Henry plays than Richard plays. There are, let's see, Henry IV, Part 1, Part 2, Henry V, Henry VI, Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, Henry VIII. So there are 7 Henry plays, and there's only Richard II and Richard III.
Okay.
Am I missing? Someone correct me if I'm wrong. Date and a half. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think 7 Henry plays to 2 Richard plays. But the 2 Richard plays slap. And I'm not saying the Henry ones don't. Henry IV Part 1 is one of my favorite Shakespeare plays of all time. I haven't read the Henry VI.
Okay.
I just haven't read it. I keep telling people I'm gonna read it. Someday I will. It's just, I'm like, I love Prince Hal in Henry IV Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3. I'm like, those are the 3 plays I need and want. I don't need any other Henrys in my life. But since we're talking about a Richard II is a rather sad play. There's a lot of loss in terms of wars, and this speech that we're looking at today is in Act 3, Scene 2. They have lost a battle. Things are bad for them. Let's look at it. Oh, let me make this a little bigger. There we go. So this is kind of like an existential speech, in the way that sometimes when Shakespeare has these really existential moments, they can be so moving and so compelling, and it makes you kind of just feel for Shakespeare. And I know that writers write speeches all the time that like aren't representative of their own thoughts and feelings, but like, yeah, I don't know. There's something about this speech that kind of like really digs into my soul of it. So I'm going to read it to all of you. Let's talk of graves, of worms, and epitaphs. Make dust our paper, and with rainy eyes write sorrow on the bosom of the earth. Let's choose executors and talk of wills. And yet not so, for what can we bequeath save our deposed bodies to the ground? Our lands, our lives, and all our Bolingbroke's, and nothing can we call our own but death, and that small model of the barren earth which serves as paste and cover to our bones. For God's sake, let us sit upon the ground and tell sad stories of the death of kings, how some have been deposed, some slain in war, some haunted by the ghosts they have deposed, some poisoned by their wives, some sleeping killed, all murdered. For within the hollow crown that rounds the mortal temples of a king keeps death his court, and there the antic sits, scoffing his state and grinning at his pomp, allowing him a breath, a little scene to monarchize, be feared and kill with looks, infusing him with self and vain conceit, as if this flesh which walls about our life were brass impregnable, and humored thus comes at the last, and with a little pin bores through his castle wall, and farewell, king. Cover your heads and mock not flesh and blood with solemn reverence. Throw away respect, tradition, form, and ceremonious duty, for you have but mistook me all this while. I live with bread like you. I feel want, taste grief, need friends. Subjected thus, how can you say to me I am a king? That's it.
Whew.
So, um, yeah, Kai, I don't think we're gonna be able to help you with this. This sounds like a job for an adult. That isn't us. um,
Yes, he who is Steve.
yeah,
Nice
nice
passage.
light passage. I know, Steve. I'm so sorry. So in this scene, we have a group of warriors, and the thing that always gets me about wars in Shakespeare, um Elizabethan war, like any like historical wars, is that it's never the kings that are going to be sent out to die in the front lines, right?
Mhm.
And I get, even still now, just war in general, right? We see the sacrifice of no worries, Kai. We see the sacrifice that these soldiers make, um and we never really see how it affects up the ladder. Like, we never really see this kind of desolation from the leaders. I want to see Steve play chess, just sending the king out first move.
Can you move the king first? I feel like
I don't know. I don't think you can move him. It's been a long time since I played chess. But yeah, so I feel like we see this loss, and we feel this loss from Henry, and we kind of have from Richard. So obsessed with Henry. And we have that kind of like sense of an even playing field, which of course, as we know, isn't necessarily true, because not everyone is equal, because there are serfs and peasants being sent out first to die. But this like internal examination of what makes me different as a king from all of you, nothing now, because we're all just food for dirt. Food for worms, Percy. Food for worms. So, Swan, I'm sorry. This was just the only speech I could think about today.
No, that's good. I know this is a little off book from what we've normally done, but go back through again. What kind of led up to this? Give me a little bit more of the backstory getting to this speech, because I have an idea, but it's not as heavy as I think the text dictates. So I'm going back and forth with that.
Yeah. So Bolingbroke is the enemy, I guess. And they have fought.
Okay.
So basically, let me see. Richard is defending his, like, there's a rebellion happening. I want to say it's like a Welsh rebellion. Let me pull up just so I'm not lying to you all. There is a yeah. Oh yeah. Thank you. Lost Limey. Bolingbroke, it turns into Henry the Fourth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we see this rebellion that's popping up, and it does eventually take hold, which is in Henry the Fourth, when we see King Henry being like, Hal, why are you wasting all of your time in taverns being drunk and a hooligan? This is what I did to be king, to become a king. So why can't you do literally anything right? So yeah, there's a Welsh rebellion happening. Richard's preoccupied with that. And then we've got Bolingbroke just kind of like Rolling Stone or snowballing, like picking up followers left and right. He gets to England, they fight. Everyone is basically just acknowledging Bolingbroke as the king, or like they're just kind of like, okay, well, this looks good. And then we find out that I want to say, bless you, I want to say it's Bolingbroke that has done it, but like a bunch of his like cabinet members or like nobles have been executed.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. There's most of the fighting happens after this. I think most of like the war stuff. But yeah,
Okay.
that's about it. That was a really bad summary. I'm sorry, y'all.
Nope.
My brain is bad today. So we've got a rebellion. We've got a rebellion from Wales on one side. We've got Bolingbroke coming in from the other side. We've got Richard, who is trying so hard to hold on to his title, and just can't do it. And then we've got this speech. And my favorite part of this is down here. For God's sake, let us sit upon the ground and tell sad stories of the death of kings. How some have been deposed, some slain in war, some haunted by the ghosts they have deposed, some poisoned by their wives, some sleeping killed, all murdered. For within the hollow crown that rounds the mortal temples of a king keeps death his court, and there the antic sits, scoffing his state, grinning at his pomp, allowing him a breath, a little scene to monarchize, be feared and kill with looks, infusing him with self and vain conceit, as if this flesh which walls about our life were brass impregnable. And humor thus comes at the last, and with the little pin bores through his castle wall, and farewell, king. So, like, we've got this list of like, look at the look at all of the ways that kings have been killed. Look at all of the ways that they have been murdered or deposed in all of these different ways. And death is just sitting there waiting, letting him play king for a few minutes, and then death comes for us all.
Okay. So I still think it is fairly irreverent, but I'm going with it anyways. So
yeah, I love irreverent. You know me. I always love a little irreverence. Yeah, what's your thought when you hear this speech?
So my first thought is, and it's funny because I've not watched it recently, but I went full like, not because he is this way in the movie, but because I've seen him play this so well, and it's Gerard Butler in 300, and it's him talking to his men and that type of like intense. Like I always think of that as the comic was very intense, the movie was very intense. Like it's just a very intense comic book adaptation and comic. And
okay, wait,
so that
300 was a comic book?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah. Surprise.
Is that why it's so popular at Dragon Con?
And I mean, again, if you're fit, then it's not a bad costume to be really fit in.
I didn't get through 300. I watched the first 5 minutes and I looked at my ex and I said, "Does everybody die in this movie?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Turn it off. I can't."
Yeah.
I couldn't get through it. I was like, they're all way too handsome for me to sit here and watch them die for 2 hours. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. Yes. So that's where I originally went. But then as you were going, and I think this is my follow-up because apparently everything's tied to movies for me recently. So when I was on the plane recently, I watched Moneyball. So I've been in a sports movie type feeling. So what I think I'm going to end up doing is, to me, this then became full Friday Night Lights. This became Kyle Chandler, and this became a college football coach coming back into the locker room to address all of his players after a really big loss. And this has that same like really heavy duty football movie loss like speech to it.
God.
So that's where my brain is going, and that's what we're getting.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. And yes, Lost Limey is correct that this idea of war lasts a long time. This War of the Roses is like decades long, and a whole lot. This is the history stuff that like I know pretty generally, but I don't know super detailed amount about the War of the Roses. I also don't know a lot historically. I pretty much know about the War of the Roses through the lens of Shakespeare. And it's funny, Swan, that you are taking this as football, because there's a play called The Complete Works of William Shakespeare Abridged, and the Reduced Shakespeare Company produced that, and it is basically, it goes through all of the plays of Shakespeare in like a 2-act play. It's very funny.
Okay, that's a
They
lot.
go through all of the history plays as a football game. So they use a crown as the football, and it's like, oh, and Henry IV passes to Henry V, Henry V, oh, loses the crown, fumbles the crown, Richard III takes over, like whatever the order is of them. Like it just kind of like runs through the whole progression of the kings, all of the history plays in like 90 seconds, and it is very, very funny. Why don't they call it a battle bouquet? I don't. Oh, because of the roses. Yeah, it's a really funny way to stage it, and it can feel like that. It can feel like, I mean, we've got like just in this scene alone, or this act alone, we've got the Welsh Rebellion coming in as like a distraction tool for Richard, and he's like, attention turns to that, but then he doesn't see Bolingbroke sneak up and murder all of his friends behind his back. So you've got that kind of real game-like atmosphere happening just in general to these characters and through these wars.
Well, I'll also admit, like, if I had any more reference for what, like, the not dressing room. Oh my gosh. I used to play sports, but we didn't have the locker room and all of that looked like for soccer. I would have done soccer, but I don't know it as well. So I default to American football because that's what I can think of.
Let me tell you, Swan, what an English football locker room looks like. I follow our boys, all of our Hotspur boys, which is a name that you Shakespeare history folks will know and love. And they play Uno. Like post videos of them just playing Uno in the locker room, and they're such sweet boys. And so I think the idea of, obviously, you know, you're going to have that same during matches, you're going to have that same level of intensity that you might have during American football. But I just think that maybe our team is special, but I don't know. I think the locker room atmosphere is a little less intense than American football.
And again, this is very much like, this is fully heightened, like Hollywood glamorized. Wow, I can't say anything. Glamour version. There we go. That's what I can say of it. And well, I'm not a huge football person. Like I played in the band during high school, but I loved the series Friday Night Lights. Like that, they did a beautiful job because while it centered around football was one of the least important characters in it. And so I like that, but it has that same, like, there's just a couple of speeches that the coaches would come in and give. And you're just like, as someone who played sports, I'm like, these are the speeches I wanted from my coach. Honestly,
I feel the same way, because like the speeches I got from my coaches were, why do you suck so much? And maybe you should stop eating. Like those were the speeches I got. I didn't get any of these like halftime pep talks.
No.
Like, give me some of that, please.
Yep. Nope. I had so when I played varsity softball, the varsity softball coach was also the varsity football coach. And to sum it up very smally, high school boys and high school girls don't respond the same to encouragement. Yeah, so I got called. I was up to the plate to bat, and he called timeout and called me over and grabbed the back of my helmet and screamed in my face that if I didn't take the next pitch, I was going to ride the bench for the rest of the game. So it was like that kind of, I'm like, this isn't motivational, coach. Like, okay. But, you know. So yeah, I
You
want it
know.
different. I want it
Yeah.
different for this.
And there's a level of uh hierarchy that's present, because you have your coach, you have your king, you have that level of control that the king has, that the coach has, but you also have your captains, you also have your higher ranking players. Like even just like in high school football, you have your seniors, and they're naturally, whether they're better players or not, they're naturally going to have more say or more sway or more power.
And even just like a level of calm, like the fact that you're 17, 18, you're just not quite as hyper crazy as 14, 15, 16. I mean, still
Yeah,
sometimes,
well.
but like, yeah, like I don't know. There's a little bit more like sage wisdom for those couple of years. But
Yeah. Yeah, so I think this is a really interesting dynamic. And I didn't watch Friday Night Lights. I watched the first episode and hated that that child got hurt. Uh and there's a theme. Like I just don't do emotional TV very well right now.
nope, that's
Um
fair.
but what you said about it is it's a show about people and not football is a set piece. It's kind of the same way I feel about Ted Lasso. Is yes, it is a show, it is a soccer show, but like it's not about soccer at all. Um Soccer is just another character
Yep.
in the show, and I think that for this series of history plays, this is actually a fun, from what you said, like as a connection that I'm making, war is a character in all of these plays and doesn't get a lot of airtime. We don't see battles that often. We see the pep talks, and then we see the fallouts,
The aftermath and the carnage.
yeah,
Yeah.
but we don't see a lot of the actual fights, and that's something that um I don't know if it's lack of stage directions and they would have just added it in Elizabethan theater. Sometimes we get a they fight. But usually, I mean, maybe it's a conservation of actors. You don't have 30 actors in a play. You've got 8, and they're doubling, tripling, quadrupling roles. So you don't have the, when I cast Henry V, I had 35 actors in it. So we could do fight scenes on stage and make it look like a war. And yeah, exactly, Lost Limey. You've got money. Money to keep, like you don't have the money to put these major battle scenes out there. And additionally, I think a lot of it is you didn't have the rehearsal time to safely do them, because we spend, in modern days, we spend a lot of time with fight choreographers making sure that fights are safe. And I don't know what the fight choreography looked like back then. That's something that I kind of want to dig into now. And if any of y'all know, hit me up.
I was also gonna say, check out the episode of Protest Too Much where you had a fight choreographer on and hung out with you.
That episode blew my mind. My friend Chewy is so
good.
smart and so cool. And when he was like, yeah, Romeo is the best fighter of all of the boys, I was like, you think he's what now?
Excuse me?
Excuse you? And just that, like, the looking at the fight scenes from an actor and fight choreographer stance was fascinating. So yes, listen to that episode. It was very good. It's mostly me going, what? Whoa.
But I think, again, in that place, you were playing the audience and all of us, because that's pretty much exactly what I was saying during it. I was like, wait, no, talk more. Like, I know I want you guys to argue because that's the whole thing, but like, talk more because I want to know.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So yeah, war is a character in these plays. War is just another presence that is always there, and the threat of war is always lingering, and it's always like part of these plays, but it never really like they're not war plays. They're comedies and tragedies, just like anything else. They're not, it's a play about war, but it's not. Yeah. this is like, my mind is right now. So that's such a cool way to think about it. And I think it's also a good way to sell the histories a little bit more, because I think people shy away from the histories. They have in their minds that they're boring, or I don't know what it is. Maybe like people have sold them as boring. They just haven't been produced enough. But Henry IV is one of the funniest plays in the canon. Richard II is one of the most emotionally gut-wrenching plays in the canon. Richard III is one of the most evil plays in the canon. Like, they're not about just kings. They're not politic plays. They're emotionally driven character pieces.
So do you think they're harder to stage? Do you think they're less accessible? Again, literally the question I asked you at the top of it, like, I am familiar with a lot of Shakespeare plays, but I couldn't have told you, like, I knew there was a Richard play, I knew there was a Henry play.
Mm-hmm.
That was the extent of it for me, and I couldn't give you any more information. And even though it came up in chat, like, I'm familiar with the term War of the Roses, but that's where it ended for me related to Shakespeare. So I'm curious if they just aren't taught as much, or aren't staged as much, or what
I think
got them there.
Yeah, I think part of it, and I've done a lot of thinking about why we teach the plays we teach. I think part of it is they're not staged very much because you have huge casts.
Okay.
You have enormous casts. Like, let me look up characters in Richard II. I did not ask for Richard III. I asked for Richard II, internet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, 24 named characters.
Wow.
Yeah. That's enormous. $41 in Richard III.
Oh my gosh.
41 named characters. Now, a lot of these characters come out and they say a thing and then they go away for the whole rest of the play. But like, that's still, either you have to edit it really cleverly or you need a huge group of actors.
Yeah.
And you typically need a wide range of age in actors. You need a lot more heavy hitters who can carry those really, like Richard II needs to be a powerhouse of an actor who has vulnerability and leadership, like that mix of being like really letting himself be really vulnerable, but also that kind of like dick of a king who won't let anyone speak out against him. Like, that balance, I think, is really hard to achieve. And so maybe just the depth of the actors that you need to do these history plays.
Okay.
I don't know. And I think because they're not produced often, they're not taught often.
Yeah.
I think tragedies are easier to stage than comedies. To be totally honest with you.
Honestly, I agree, because as someone who is not an actor, I'm pretty sure I could phone in pain, suffering, sadness more than I can phone in comedic timing.
No, I love this because it's just like, now I'm picturing Swan as like, to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is my word and mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against the sea of trouble and by opposing end them. Guys,
because I'm so nervous and I want to make sure I get all of my words out, so I just speak really,
to
really
that
fast.
sleep, sleep, chance to dream. There's the rubber in that sleep of death, or dreams that come. We have shuffled off this mortal coil. Must give us fuss.
Yeah, not wrong.
Phoning in, the idea of phoning in Hamlet is the funniest thing to me. Yeah, I played Hamlet in college. Totally phoned it in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. They wanted me to play Macbeth the next year, but I was just like, ugh. Like, what do you want me to do? The same thing again?
Oh my god.
And then they're like, you want to do A Midsummer Night's Dream? And you're like, absolutely not.
But
no, ma'am.
Oh god. Oh, it's so funny.
Wow. I don't even know what we were talking about before. I think
There's a reason that Steph is in a production right now and Emily is not. That's what we'll say.
then you have we did Little Shop of Horrors. That's how I met Mike.
Yes.
In college, and Little Shop is it's a farce. Like it's a it's a play full of cartoon characters, right?
Yeah.
But like we had two casts of Audrey Seymour Dentist. So the two sets of the three leads. And one cast was Mike as the dentist, and then two others as Audrey and Seymour, who were, I'm going to say this as kindly as possible, musical theater actors.
Oh, okay.
If anyone watched season 1 of The Flash, you'll know exactly what I mean. Grant Gustin is a musical theater actor, and then he learned how to act for TV after that. So you've got that, which is perfect for Little Shop.
Right.
Then you had the other cast, which was me as Audrey and then two others. And Anthony was our assistant director. Steve says musical theater, vomit. Was that the face I made? I love musical theater. Musical theater actors. But yeah, so Anthony was our assistant director. So he was kind of like in charge of our cast. And we were like, of course, you get me and Anthony on a roll. And we're like, we're doing this gritty. We're gonna play this so real. This is gonna be like the darkest, because like these characters are suffering and they're in pain and they're like so we were like gritty Little Shop.
I love it so much.
And so we had this like honestly quite upsetting probably version of the show. And then you have Mike and he's like, I'll be a dentist. Just like so funny. So because it is a comedy. And we were like, no, this is a tragedy.
Oh my god. I love it.
He Who is Steve says, I watched a musical once. Was the musical that you watched once? Once is a musical and it's very good. It's amazing. You should watch it if you haven't watched it. All of the actors play their own instruments. It's one of those. It's very cool. I like it. Oh, Avenue Q. Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know why I didn't just assume that.
Nope, that's fair.
Mike just laughed from the other room.
No, that's
You should actually check out Steve. You might like 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, featuring the hit song "My Unfortunate Erection."
we talked about
That 8-year-old leave yet?
Yeah, that's fair. On the episode with the knocking on the door, with the very perverse speech, that one came up, which I appreciate.
Yep. Oh, that's right. That's right. Oh, yeah. Comedy. You've got actors who are good at. I feel like. I don't know. It's hard because maybe we've hit it. The history plays live in the middle of comedy and tragedy, and they have both. And I think part of like what makes the tragedy so good is that they all have those light moments. Like Romeo and Juliet is a comedy until Act 3.
Yeah.
But your actors, you have comedic actors. The nurse is a comedic actor all the way through. The porter, like we talked about at Dragon Con, a comedic actor. That's the point of his being in the play. In the comedies, you've got some serious things, but for the most part, you need good comedic timing, and to look like you're in love with someone. Easy peasy. And the histories are more nuanced. There's not a lot of romance in the history plays. Maybe that's why people don't.
Honestly, I feel like that makes a lot of sense, as silly as it is. But yeah. And I think we teach Hamlet, Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet in school because they're the most produced plays. I think that's where it started. I think they were the most produced,
So people decided that they had would have the easiest time teaching those. And it just became this cycle of, because we teach them, we make more productions, and because we make more productions, we keep teaching them. I don't think it's the right move. I have strong opinions on what should be taught in the American education system for Shakespeare, but he who Steve is right. They teach Caesar a lot. I think that Caesar is really hard because for a classroom, Caesar is incredible to teach persuasive speaking, but you only need like 3 speeches in the entire play. You need Cassius's, you need Brutus's, and you need Antony's. And I think that it's hard to teach a full play for 3 speeches. I would just teach them out of context. Lost Limey says the history plays are also very slanted propaganda-wise to make Elizabeth and James' family look good. Well, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that we would be having a very different conversation if we were in England choosing plays to teach. But maybe what they teach in England informed what they started teaching in the US, and it's just this like vicious cycle that nobody has decided to re-examine in 200 years.
Well, and I wonder too if with some of it, kind of like what you were saying, is because it gets consistently taught and then produced, there's a lot of information then around it. So if you don't want to do as much of your own research or push as hard, there's a lot available to you that you can just, I don't want to say regurgitate, because again, even though I learned Romeo and Juliet in high school, I had a fantastic English teacher who was incredibly critical of it and maybe enjoy it in a way that I did not. Like reading it, I didn't, but as we discussed it, that was fantastic. So
yeah.
But it wouldn't surprise me if just because that's what's available out there, so that's what we'll keep doing.
Right. And people, teachers are usually, not me, usually averse to Shakespeare in the first place. So they're going to do what is the easiest with the most information out there. I was thinking the other day how I could monetize just like not being a full-time high school English teacher, but just going to other people's, like teaching Shakespeare units for people. Mm-hmm. So like a teacher's like, I don't want to teach Shakespeare right now. We've got 3 weeks blocked off for this unit. And then I come in and get paid to do those 3 weeks for them.
That would be cool.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was like, oh, how would you do that? Because that'd be so dope.
Yeah, it would be really cool. That being said, I'm teaching Midsummer right now, and my kids are hilarious and love it. So I feel like I'm on top of the world. They're like so interested. I do a little fun fact with them every day. And a kid sent me an email and he was like, oh, this video made me think of your daily fun facts. It was like a funny little Shakespeare video. And they want to learn things and they want to know more about the characters.
Oh my gosh, that's the dream.
Yeah. Yeah. The other day a kid was like, oh man, I thought this story was good, but like, nah, it's legendary.
And Steph's little heart just goes...
Mm-hmm. I'm drawing arrows all over the board for, like who's in love with who to keep track of it. And I've got kids, they're like, let me add this arrow. Let me add this arrow for this. And I'm going to add these arrows. And I was like, you do you. You do you.
That's wonderful.
Swan, let's talk about art.
Yeah.
No, that's bad. That's my face. Don't do that. That's better. That's what we wanted.
I wasn't looking at it. All of a sudden, I was like, no, that's bad. I'm like, oh no, what did I do?
Oh, no, not your art. Your art is so good always. Yeah, so with a speech like this, and this was a question that when I was re-listening to the Dragon Con episode, I was like, I want to ask this, and I wanted to bookmark it to ask you. How do you decide so you've got, on your page, you've got what, 5 panels right now?
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
7. Okay. So you only have 7 shots, and not all of them have everyone's faces. Mm-hmm. How do you decide? So let's say you have 3 shots of one character for this full speech. how do you decide which 3 emotions to show or which 3 facial expressions to show to make this whole, because this whole monologue, it's like a 30-line monologue, and you've got like 3 frames. And I want to know how you do that. How do you choose? And then how, like, for facial expression, for the arts, like the technical art side of it?
So I'll say some of this is specific to the constraints of our brief as we have done it, because aside from the Much Ado episode where I did a 2-page spread because it was so good and I couldn't not, I try to keep it to just 1. So the big thing that I always think of in a lot of the comics that I read is, if you are going to, we'll say, again, you've got a lot of pages to play with. If you're going to repeat a whole panel where it's actually just like the same panel more than once, but maybe like one little thing changes, that's usually played up for like comedic effect. Like, you've got, I always think of a character sitting in the middle of the panel and like eating or reading a book or doing something very sedentary. And then like slowly, like the cat from Miss Captain Marvel comes walking in, and like, that's the thing. But like, because there's some tension because what the cat can do, and like you're just watching it, like that's another one where you are playing with the audience to play with how they're feeling in that scenario. So aside from that, with these, I try and think about the fact that I don't want to show the same thing a few times because I only have a page. And so with this, that's where like a lot of the times why I push so hard into a specific theme, because then I can put myself in the setting. And like for this one, like remember what it felt like when Coach was giving a really emotional speech. And I go back to like a cinematography aspect of it. Like, okay, so you need to know that he's addressing all the players. So I need a big shot that shows them. I need to show the grief from them. Even if you don't see the grief in the upfront of his face, you see it on the players. So he's addressing them. And then I definitely want to have an initial thing that shows him like thinking or mulling over what he's about to say. And then with these, it's how can I then keep the fact that he's going to be stressed and sad through all of this, but continue to move through and give him something else to interact with. So why he's then, looking at the players and changing his focus so that he's still talking to them. He's still sad, but you're getting a little bit more than just his face. And this is where, like, if it was a play, you would just want his face. I would just want to watch this actor emote beautifully. But because I can't get that same type of thing here, how can I still evoke emotion from my reader with what they're doing? So Sonata asks, do you use photo references as models, or you practice enough to draw it straight? So so much of this for me is I wing it, Sonata. So no, I don't have any photo references pulled up right now, which is why sometimes costumes or scenery doesn't always look exactly like it's supposed to. But people are where I'm most confident. I love to draw people, and specific to your question, Steph, I love to draw people emoting. And I think part of that came from animation and having the animation background, because I loved that part of it. So I loved being able to show a character going through a process without necessarily saying anything. And so that has helped me a lot in making comics, because I can utilize that part of it and I like it so much. So yeah, if I was going to be given this as a script with the breakdowns that Steph gave me and then go forward with it, I would definitely look up references. I would pull in different things. Like I'd probably look up Kyle Chandler and be like, okay, so what did he look like? But on this, I have it mostly in memory, but you'll find we haven't done anything crazy. And we talked about it. Like there are certain things that I don't know as well. So if Steph brought them to me, I'd be like, yeah, like let me quick Google this to see what a car looks like. Yeah, because she's not wrong, because I don't draw cars real well. I have like one car I can kind of draw, but yeah. So yeah, so it's a lot of how can I really play with this character and we'll say, as if I were the set director and all that. I can now literally play and move him exactly as I want, and he has no say in the matter. So how do I want to play with him? How do I want to make him hurt and make him emote, which sounds so sick and twisted, but it really is that. Like, how can I, as you look at him, you feel his pain? How can I make that apparent?
Yeah, that just seems so hard to me as an actor who has full range. Well, I guess I'll say this, like, I haven't had full range of my face for all of the rehearsals for this show, because we've been rehearsing indoors and masked, and I have found it incredibly difficult to isolate, like, to try and get anything in my eyes.
Yeah.
Because I have dead, tired teacher eyes. And so, yeah, but like normally, for me, like as an actor, my face is where I'm comfortable. I struggle with body, because I just, it's something that I need to work on. But like my face, nailing it all the time. And so to not have the flexibility of like, if this is a 90-second speech, 90 seconds of my face.
Mm-hmm.
If you made me choose 3 shots of my face, which we took cast photos the other day, and Steve, we took cast photos the other day, and the photographer was like, show me what face would your character make? And I like literally half the photos are me going like, what? I don't know. Because I don't know. To put that in a still look, like, not a model, y'all. I'm not. I have excellent control over my face in movement, 0 control over my face in still, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So that is kind of like where I'm at for feeling like you are pulling these stills from magic, like how do you know what, like like Swan, make a mischievous face for me. Yeah, like that's so good.
So
why couldn't I just make that face instead of
so I will say part of this is, and this again, it sounds so creepy, I can't figure out a better way to say it, but I watch people a lot, like when they talk to me, when they act, how they emote. Like I like people watching, and I like, especially my friends who I know really well, like I like watching what their faces do when they make different faces and they are talking about different things. So like a lot of that is in there, but also some of this is straight up what we had to do in college was sit with a mirror on our desk, and you had to make a face, and then you had to draw that face, and it was very specific that you weren't working from a photograph because that's a different type of art practice. Like drawing from life versus drawing from photo utilizes different skills. So you have to yeah,
even if the photo is of a person.
Mm-hmm. So there's a very big thing, especially when you are life drawing. And one of my professors talked about how you need to spend more time, whether it's humans or fruit or whatever, more time looking at the subject than you do looking at your paper. And the reason is because when you are looking at your paper, you are remembering it, you're not observing it. So your brain is filling in the gaps of what is there rather than you just straight up observing. Yeah. So with this, like also because like I still have one, I'll see if I can find it from college where I had to do a shocked face. And so it's my face like that. And I'd have to look at that. Now, part of it is the time of the world when I went to college where cell phones didn't have great cameras. So taking selfies wasn't as easy. But also the thing was, as you were animating and you were working quickly, the idea would be that you could look in the mirror, you could make that face, you could quick sketch it, because I'm not going for photorealism. I'm going for, how does this face look? How can I distill all the details of this face down into 15 lines of a cartoon and still let the audience know what it is that I'm trying to say? Like it's that economy of the line that animation pushes so hard. Like, okay, you've got to show it, but you've got to show it this fast because you only get this amount. So Just get super, super technical. Keep your eye on the ball. Yeah. Sonata Meg, exactly. Yeah, so it says, epiphany. It's like in baseball, they say keep your eye on the ball, and you literally do. Yeah. So rather than trying to anticipate your hit, if you are just watching the ball and you have the muscle memory to swing, yeah. It's fun. It's all connected. It goes all the way to the top.
It's all connected, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is that's wild. And is that hard to get used to? Because like I look at something, and I'm like, oh yeah, I can hold that picture. I have a visual memory. Like I can hold that picture in my head.
Mhm.
But I can't draw. So like I wouldn't know how to translate that image onto the paper. Is it about like watching? So like if I'm drawing an apple, my eyes are on the apple and my hand is going on my paper at the same time.
Mhm.
Instead of like looking at the apple and then looking at my paper to draw the apple.
So you could do both. There are different ways to work different skills. So for me, like there's a whole thing, so many art school things. So where you literally you do a one-line drawing. So you are looking at the item that is still life and you put your pencil down and you do not pick it up until you are done and you don't look at it the whole time. So
you
that
don't
kind
look
of
at it.
You don't look at your picture at all. So
you're like the apple's over here and you're like,
Yep. Yeah, it's super weird. And they look strange. And we've had to do them with like portraits and all sorts of stuff. But part of that is literally it's working on like sports spatial awareness. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, I guess knowing what your body, because like when you like for skating, like when you do a jump, you don't think about it.
Right.
Like the more you think about it, the more you're going to be in your head and the more likely you are to pop.
Right.
So it's just training your body.
Yep. But like working up to like once you get to a certain point where like the picking up the speed to get into your jump, like that part starts to become second nature. So you're like, okay, so now what I'm working on is how do I push off harder? How do I tuck harder? How do I do that part of it? But the initial part you're already building on, and it's very much the same thing. So you spend time, looking a lot at your picture and then looking at the still life. And then you try and do where you're looking at the still life more. And then when you put pencil to paper, you are making firm, decisive lines rather than sketching. And then, working up to like, okay, so now when I'm looking at it, I'm still looking at my page, but I'm looking up even more. And then what we would do is we would have actual life models who would do like 5 to 10 second poses. So they would start with like a punch and you'd get 5 seconds and you'd quick sketch that. And then you get like, they'd move again and what you were trying to do is you were trying to sketch movement and sketch motion and capture that life. And because you only had a little bit of time, you had to sketch it quickly and get your lines down so that you knew what it would look like. And yeah, so a lot of it is practice. I know that's a terrible thing to say, but it's true of everything. Like it's just going through that again and again.
It just is so, I guess I never thought about, I never thought about not looking at what you're drawing the whole time that you're drawing. I never considered that could be an option, or not an option, but like that's the skill that you're working towards.
Yeah. And again, like as much or as little as you want to do it, depending on how you're drawing. Like I think one of my favorite memories is not that many years ago, I was at a Harry Potter festival up in a town near me, and I was at a table working with an artist that I absolutely admire, who's incredible. And he was sketching, we were doing Patronus portraits. And so he was sketching and he had this great like tiger that was the backdrop to this one. And at one point he's literally like sketching the outline. And I watched him look up from his sketch and continue to talk to the customer while he's still going with his pencil and just like finish the outline of the sketch perfectly. And I'm just like, how did you just do that? Like I watched you do it and I understand it, but I was like, how did you do that? And yeah, it's again, still magic to me too.
Yeah. Wow. It just like blew my mind.
I think what's been cool about teaching some of this is like many things, when I used to tutor math, it was breaking down like, okay, I understand how to solve for X, but why? Like,
Yes.
Why did I do this thing? Like, I just knew to do it, but why did I do it? So, like, when it comes to art, like, okay, I just know that I want this face to be made, but why? How did I get to that point? And breaking that down. And that's been really gratifying to then be able to teach the kids, like, okay, I went through this, I went through this, I went through this. You don't always have to do that, but you can if you're having trouble getting to the final point.
Yeah,
like
it's that backwards design and that like deeper understanding. We had a whole PD training on this year. About like there's a search engine that is pretty cool, and it like if you type in any math problem, it'll show the work, it'll show the answer, and it'll show all of the steps to get there, and how teachers are like, you know, wanting to block this site. And our presenter was like, don't, like, why, what's the point of them knowing how to solve this problem if they can find it on the internet? Give them this problem and then say, how do you change the equation to make y equal 33 instead of 21 or whatever? Like, what is it about this that, you know, is important to understand? And it's not the answer.
No,
because the answers are on the internet everywhere. And that's kind of something that like has shaped the way I teach. I have first few years of teaching, I gave, you know, like multiple choice tests and stuff like that, quizzes, and, you know, what character said this line or whatever. But like, that's not good teaching because who cares? You know, I tell my kids all the time, if somebody like stops you on the street in 10 years and says, what color were Frankenstein's eyes? You don't owe them an answer. or like, and if you're kind, you can look it up in your phone.
Right.
Who cares? What does it represent that Frankenstein's eyes are X color is that's a valid question. Yeah. What is the symbolism of this? Instead of who says this line, what does this line show about this person's character development? Like, those are the questions that are important to ask, not like who, what, why, or who, what, when.
It's straight up the difference between just being good at memorizing and actually understanding. Because I was terrible at memorizing. So you asked me like, okay, well, what date was this? I'm like, I studied like crazy and I don't remember, but I understood the ramifications of this war. Like, I got that part.
I understood the emotional impact. That was always my thing. I was like, I don't know what happened, but like, I know how those characters were feeling on a deep spiritual level. Steve, this can't be a math show. Maybe we'll get my dad on.
Oh, okay.
My dad is a human calculator. He went to MIT for engineering. He is a genius. Does not understand Shakespeare, but supports the hell out of me. And when he came and saw me in Othello, there is a line that like Othello like kills Desdemona, spoiler alert. And then she's like, not dead yet. And Othello screams, not dead? And like just the way the actor said it, my dad lost his mind. And so now there are a few Shakespeare plays that have not dead lines. When I did Macbeth a couple of years ago, I was sitting in the back, like I was one of the witches. So I was like sitting, like waiting to enter for the end after, like while Macduff and Macbeth are fighting. And Macduff has a not dead line. And so like I'm standing like kind of behind the audience and I just hear my dad chuckle so loud.
Oh, God, I love it.
If you ask him his favorite Shakespeare quote, that's what he'll say. Not dead. It's so funny. I know, Steve, I'm sorry I spoiled the ending of Othello. Oops.
Also, I'm just getting caught up. Jeepers, I cannot talk. Again, this is why I draw and don't talk. Yes, I enjoy everything that's happening between Lost Limey and Sonata.
Yes.
So, yay.
Yes. Yeah. There's so much to think about today already. What has formed the American education perspective on Shakespeare? How to draw emotions, like how to capture emotions feel like we've covered a lot of ground already in just the first hour.
Yes. Yes.
This looks like what you have right now looks like a chameleon tail.
Ah! Oh, that's funny.
Nope, go away. Take that off. Is it an arm?
It will be, yes. So,
Okay.
So this is cool, and this leads into something that I think is really interesting. So you and I have talked about, we'll say, like the comic book creation pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, I am working fully digitally, so everything that I draw is all being drawn on my tablet. So what is here? Let's zoom out. So what I was working on first is very much my blocking. Like this is my thumbnailing. This is what I did when we were in person. This is what I did in the colored pencil, so that I could just kind of, this is me moving my little set pieces around, figuring out where I want my characters to be, how I want them to look.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense to a certain extent, but it mostly makes sense to me. Like, and that's the important part. And because I am the only one who's going to be working on it, I can use as much visual shorthand as I want because I don't have to leave it to anybody else to interpret. So as I'm going back over, like, I'm trying to think of ones. Most of these I've kept pretty much on. But like here, I was like, oh, like down here, I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll have him holding his helmet. But I was like, as I'm drawing it, I'm like, no, I don't need it. And so for this one, the goal is going to be then that he's going to have his hand resting on top of his football helmet. And Sonata, this is one I'm probably going to have to look up because I don't draw football helmets that much. But that's where, like, I know that I wanted to put his hand holding it on top of it because that feels very like the football player is uncomfortable, and where he finds comfort is by holding his helmet. Like that's just that makes sense to me. It's why, baseball players still have their gloves on, sometimes, and are like tossing the ball back and forth. And like it works too with the fighting part of it, where like they might still be holding their military helmet or that type of bit.
Well, there's with the crown speech. There's a lot of that symbolism in here. So for within the hollow crown that rounds the mortal temples of a king keeps death his court. So you've got this gorgeous imagery. And I think that the idea of using hollow crown hollow is an irrelevant descriptor for a crown. Because it is just a little donut. It's just a little donut that you put on the top of your head to make yourself feel powerful. And to use the descriptor hollow to call out the fact that it's just a round is such a powerful moment, because it's what's like the person inside it is no different than anyone else. But like this ring gives them so much symbolic power. And so I think a football helmet does the same, because the idea is that it protects the player, or it gives them some sort of status, I guess.
I was gonna say safety, power, status, absolutely. And depending on how you adorn it, gives you a bump. But as soon as you take it off, it's the same as everybody else's, and it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. Oh, who would have thought we found so much symbolism in football?
But yeah, so that's where like curly Q chameleon tail actually turns into human holding football helmet.
And that's really cool. Because those base shapes, that's something that I'm really interested in. Like when you showed just the sketches, seeing, I mean, you can tell that they're people. You can tell, you can even tell emotion from these sketches. In a way, like with the angles of their heads, or, because you've got this set of like sitting on the benches, and you can just tell that they're sad. Just from like 3 lines and a little circle.
So again, another thing that comes from animation. Now, if I had majored in sequential illustration and actually graduated with a comic book degree, I might have learned the same things. But this was very much, we worked on a thing in animation talking about silhouette. You had to be able to tell, and this ties into the flour sack thing as well. So silhouette is your character needs to be legible if it is in silhouette. And so there's a great thing. I always think of Aladdin because that was one of the early how to draw books that I had. And like if you see Carpet standing, you could tell what Carpet was feeling like, even if you couldn't see anything. Also, Carpet doesn't have a face. So he's emoting there. But also, like, if you've got Aladdin kind of tipped funny, like, you get that kind of mischievous thing to him. Or if you've got, like, Jasmine kind of, like, leaning away, you can see her being kind of withdrawn. So you get all these different body types, all these different body language types, but you can tell what's going on through the silhouette. So that's a huge part of it. And then what we had to do in actual animation is we had to take a flour sack, which has no eyes, no mouth, no facial, nothing. And we had to tell a story with it that involved emotion. So how do you emote with something that has no face? And so that's a big part of it, because it's teaching you, again, as I'm realizing later, and not so much as a stupid 19-year-old, I was like, oh, this is teaching me how to draw emotion. Oh,
I wish I wasn't such an idiot when I was younger. Like, I wish.
Oh, there was so much happening that I was blissfully unaware of. Also,
right? So stupid. Yeah. Hi, Kurt.
So stupid. Stupid kid. But yeah, so that's
stupid
all
kids.
And what I tell my students when I teach them the stick figure part of it is stick figures are really easy to draw and really easy to erase. So if I do this rough sketch of these characters and I don't think it looks like they're sad, I erase them and I draw in characters that pose is pushed even more, or I add something to it, or I change something in that set so that I already know as I go to add in details on them, the emotion's already there. Now I'm just adding the set dressing and bulking that up even.
Yeah. Here's a pop quiz for you that isn't in any way self-serving for me.
Oh boy.
If you were to capture words, let me try that again. I know, right? If you were to capture mischief in a body position, what would it be? Don't get this wrong, Swan. Don't get it wrong. There's no right answer. I need you to help me. Like I said before, face, amazing. How to hold my body, struggling.
No, I don't want this. All right. So then now you get to actually watch me kind of like work through my thought process on it. So I want this hip and I want this lean. So I want a curved body pose. I want a little bit of like shoulder lean and hip pop. I don't want like super tall, standing proud stuff. Okay. I want a little bit either hands in here, but because it's not evil and crafty, that's why I'm still allowing for like some open body language.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking very much like traveling salesperson or like professional huckster at a sideshow. So they're welcoming you. Yeah, but so they're hunched over because that makes sense in my brain, but they're also still opening you. So it's kind of that like come along a little bit type pose is what I'm thinking.
Okay. I've been working a lot on like keeping my arms, keeping tension in my arms at all times and not letting them just kind of like noodle.
Yeah.
And I feel like I have had my hands on my hips too much. I feel like I am too reliant on that because like I'm the same way as that. Like this is kind of my go-to, hands on my hips and like whatever this is.
Yeah.
But I also think that like maybe if I pigeon one of my feet and give some knee bend there, that'll give me that like arched body position.
Yeah, and I also like that feels very mischievous, feels very like moves like smoke. So it's kind of like it's got like that serpentine type movement. So again, you don't broadly gesture. Like if you're going to come in, like you're going to bring your arm in and flourish up, because that's like, because you're playing with what's in front of you, even though they can't see it. Like that's how that's how mischievous looks in my brain.
I love it.
One of the weirder sentences that I've said. So even
Is it
even well, even like the look over the shoulder, but there's okay. So I'm working through this, but like
I know, I just like put you on the spot here.
No, it's good. I like it. It's the I'm trying to think how to say it. It is the complete confidence in oneself without outwardly showing that. It is that every movement that I'm making is completely planned and completely purposeful, even though I am not being boastful with my actions. So I move with purpose, and everywhere that I kind of slip and slide into, like, and move to, it's very graceful, but I'm meant to be there, but I'm not outwardly being like, hey, I'm here now. So yeah, it's that there's a lot of like internal, like, I don't want to say full of oneself, but fully self-confident.
It's like a masked ego.
Yes, that's
it's there, but it's masked.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I could also see, oh, okay. You know what I'm thinking is a little bit is very much like you had like Megara from Hercules, where she's got kind of that, like, she's usually got her head tilted down. She's got one of the hips popped, whether she is putting her hand on her hip or not. But she's kind of got that, like, little bit of allure, but also, like, done with your shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that's where, yeah. So kind of, I twinkle.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, okay, that's fun. That's cool. That's helpful.
Yeah.
For no reason whatsoever.
No, it's good. It's good. This is how I get to play the 1 minute audience challenges me game. Like,
yeah,
play a dragon card.
Oh my god. That would be so fun though. Like doing like little clips.
Yeah.
Like if I'm trying to think of ways we can like do like little mini challenges. If there are like super like one line, like,
oh yeah,
like give like a one line of text that has like a really like clear emotional hook, and then draw that character in 60 seconds or face or whatever it is that would be really, really fun.
That'd be crazy fun.
Yeah.
Well, I like the challenge too. And so there was I had a group of middle schoolers who came, and we had a whole project thing that we were set to do, but they finished it really early. So we still had an hour, and they're like, okay, well, you need to find something to do with them. I'm like, okay. So I took them upstairs to the art room, which is where I'm more comfortable. But I picked 3 of them, and I had them pose. And then I had the rest of us get a minute on the clock, and we drew as much as we could. And I would try and get them to do really big poses. But the beautiful thing about a minute is, one, it's not that long. And so if you don't get it done, it's okay. Like, it doesn't matter. And whatever you focus on, if you draw one character, if you draw all 3, there's no wrong way to do it. And because we're going to switch it up, it doesn't matter. But you get to have fun. And then it pushes the people who are posing to try and do like, okay, well, how can I be more complicated? Or how can I make this harder? And it ended up being super fun. So
that is really cool. It's also the idea of like quantity over quality. And I imagine that's as freeing for art as it is. So I do National Novel Writing Month. I feel like I can't say every year anymore. I used to do it every year, and the past 2 years I just haven't done it. And it's really stressing me out. But the goal is writing a 50,000 word novel in the month of November.
Okay, that's NaNoWriMo, right?
Yeah. Okay. And it's awesome because I am the type of person that will write one sentence and then delete it and work on one word for 6 hours because I just don't know what else to do. So it allows me the time to get out of my head and just write for the sake of writing rather than overthinking everything that I'm doing. And so I imagine timed drawings are the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it just gets you out of your head and lets you just draw.
Which, and honestly, we've talked about it a bit on some of the Doodle Crew interviews, that was kind of what Doodle Crew allowed people to do, because we had a 3-hour time limit. Obviously 3 hours is a lot, but it's not a ton. And some of us can work into a piece for 5 to 10 hours and still not be happy with it. So there was this isn't for anything. It's not a commission. You're not getting paid. You're just doing the draw. If you hate it at the end, you spent 3 hours working on your craft and you never have to look at it again. Like it's the same thing where it's very freeing, because there's no pressure that it has to be anything. And as a lot of us are freelance artists, like so much of what we do, everything is a commission, everything is freelance, or everything is going to be promotional material, or needs to be a print, or needs to be a sticker. So when you say, I don't really care what happens to this piece, I'm doing it because I want to, it's a whole freeing thing.
Yeah, that's really cool. And when you have monetized your passion, that I imagine you don't have a lot of time to ever do that.
It can be really hard.
Someone like forcing you to take time for yourself and your like your personal fun. That's got to be really important.
Yeah. Monetizing your fun is a very tricky thing to balance.
Mm-hmm.
That is for sure.
Mm-hmm. That is for sure. Gosh. Yeah. I've been scheduling the upcoming Protest Too Much episodes, and I'm just like, because I am in tech week, I am, working full time. I am trying to also edit Adventure Inc. and we've got a Patreon episode that I need to edit this week. And I'm just like, when am I going to do that? Great question.
Yep.
Before Friday. Maybe. It might be one of those weeks where I get it all balanced and leveled and lined up, and then I'm like, Mike, can you just listen to this and like put a little marker in anytime someone coughs, and I'll deal with it later.
Yeah. And I think that's again, it's why I like working on some of these projects with multiple people, like especially with In Addition, like we have multiple people. So if someone can't edit one week, like somebody else can take it up, and that's huge. And I don't have that in all my projects. Like there's somewhere I'm like, no, this just is me, and I just have to draw it, and I don't have anybody else.
Yeah. No. Yeah, that's Protest Too Much. I have to schedule it. I have to do it. I have to edit it. I have to schedule it to go out. I have to watch the numbers go up every 5 minutes. I don't have to do that last part, but y'all, Anchor had a we get home from Dragon Con. I'm so jazzed about Protest Too Much. I'm like, gosh, I'm like, I got a new patron from our Dragon Con live show. Like, I'm on top of the world. We've had so much Twitter engagement. I had 30 people vote every single day in a whatever poll on Twitter. I was like, oh, we're killing it. And then the next episode goes out and it's like 12 listens. And I was like, I appreciate those 12 people. I'm so happy for them. But like, what happened?
Yeah.
Everything was going so well. Everything was so good. What happened? Anchor just wasn't counting listens. It was
I feel like that's one of those where it's like we heard it so much at Dragon Con where like, don't check your statistics a ton because it'll drive you crazy. And then it's like, here, we're going to make you practice it in real time.
And sweet Tony P. Oh gosh, I love Tony. Because in the In Addition chat, I was like, y'all, I don't know how to reconcile this. Like, it's the best week I've ever had for engagement online, on social media. And it's the worst week. I have never had a worse week of listens. Like, the first week I started the podcast, I had more listens than this. Like, you know, any of my dip weeks, I've had more listens than that. Like, what happened?
Yeah.
What did I do to mess this up? And it was really interesting because Tony gave me a great perspective, and that is that listens are their own brand of social media. So yes, sometimes new Twitter follows and engagement can convert to listens. Sometimes new listens can convert to social media engagement, but like they live in their own separate bubble of listens are their own form of engagement. Twitter is a separate form. Facebook is a separate form. Instagram is a separate form. So like you kind of have to silo them and appreciate when there is crossover, but not judge a boost in one to directly result in a boost of another. And I thought that was really, really helpful insight and advice. But then Anchor emailed everyone and was like, hey, sorry, we didn't count listed a lot of listens last week, so you'll see your numbers jump up. Sorry about that.
Sorry, we panicked you.
Sorry, we made you check our site. Like, but maybe they were just trying to drive more traffic to the Anchor site, because I know every 5 minutes on Thursdays, every 5 minutes I'm checking Anchor. I'm like, do we have another listen yet? Is there another listen? Ooh, it popped up too. Ooh. Oh, Sonata, I wish I could be this person. No schedule, F the algorithm, F the views. I admire you sincerely.
Yep.
I didn't used to think I was a type A person. I used to think I was like so chill. I'm like so cool. I'm not high, because I think I equated type A with high maintenance.
Because I think that's how it's projected. I think if you are, you know, whenever they use type A as a descriptor, it's always for the people who are terrible in the movies and TV shows. Like, yeah.
And I was so anti-associating myself with that. And then Mike said it once. He was like, yeah, something about being type A. And I was like, excuse you, I'm not type A. And he just looks at me and he goes, how many spreadsheets do you have active right now? And I was like, well, okay, first of all, rude. Second of all, quit peeping at my screen. Third of all, 4. So, that's just how I organize. Like, I love spreadsheets. I love them. I love being early to things. I have a panic attack if I'm going to be on time. I was 2 minutes late to tech rehearsal yesterday.
Oh no.
I went and picked up a cast member's shoes to bring them. And from their house to the theater, 2 of the on-ramp exits were closed, or the highway entrances were closed.
Yeah.
So I had to like detour around. And watching the like ETA on my GPS, like you'll get there at 3:02. I was like, Stephanie, it's fine. You can be 2 minutes late. You know that nothing is going to start right away anyway. Like, you know that nobody else is going to be on time. Everyone else is going to be late. Everyone's going to wander in at 1:15 with no care in the world. You can allow yourself to drive safely and be there 2 minutes late. And I had to like go through that. And I'm very proud of myself because I was like, yeah, I'm 2 minutes late. What of it? I didn't say that, but like, yeah, I didn't apologize when I got there, which normally I would have been like, I'm so sorry. 2 of the on-ramps were closed, but it didn't matter. I didn't need to because it was okay. So that's growth, y'all. Welcome to welcome to my life. Welcome to my growth.
Yeah, I had the driving thing, especially because in my brain, I'm always like, no, if I just drive faster, I can make it up. But like, I had to really work hard. I was like, this is unsafe. It's not worth it to be unsafe to yourself or to other drivers for a couple of minutes, even though it's going to make you crazy. It's just
even though I have a face like that football coach. Such a like, oh god. Speaking of that football coach and not that panel, this like standout player in the middle is a really cool tool. Like breaking the what do you call them?
Actually, breaking the panel.
Breaking the panel. Is that what it? Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So the in between, like where the panels are, this little space in here is the gutter, is what it's called. So it's funny, and we talked about it a little bit on the live show. There are some really cool ways, like if you want to tell all of your comics in some sort of square arrangement of different square panels, that's totally fine. There are amazing stories told that way. But there's also a lot of ways that you can play with it, and your panels don't have to be square, don't have to be in line, and you can break them and move them around, and it's a very fun thing. But I find usually with those, I have to plan a little bit more before I can jump into them. Like this would be one where I would start this out in my little thumbnail, and then when I got to the page, I was like, okay, well, how could I push this more? How could I change this a little bit and give a more exciting or more visually interesting thing? But it's one of those again, and as we're moving quickly, I do with what is the easiest to understand and what can I finish in this time frame that I've got. But I like when it pulls out, and it's, even though, and this is one we talked about, again, I keep referencing the Dragon Con thing, but that the coach is standing here. Like, that that's him. And even in your brain, that when we move to this panel, that it's still the same guy. But I like the idea that, like, this character right here, his pain is so, like, up in the forefront that even though this panel is moving to the coach talking, you're still caught up in this character feeling it right there. And I like that. I like the way it visually pulls your eye, not draw on this layer, like it pulls your eye right down this way, and he's still here, but then once you get to like this spot, then you're totally ready to go down to there. So that's what I'm seeing and what I'm thinking when I'm kind of laying that part out.
Well, what I like about it so much is that, just what I like about this page is that this speech is long, and we don't start it until the second to last panel. Like the speech doesn't start until the bottom row, right?
So I was thinking that, or I was thinking, again, because it's something I think of when I think of football movies or TV shows, is it would start with a voiceover. So you would get, because it's such a long speech, how do you fill up that time? So you start with, you've got the scoreboard showing their loss and showing like, the carnage of the scene. You've got the coach, which is, the main character walking alone and walking slowly and sadly through, garbage that was left on the field from all the confetti from the team that won, and, walking past the empty bench and that type of stuff. And then descending the players, where when he hits I'd say if I were staging it, once he hit the really heavy part of the speech, that's where you actually now cut to the actor speaking. And instead of being a voiceover, you now get him saying it and emoting it. And this is also how I would get around if I didn't want to just have a really, really long single cut on an actor giving a monologue. I would break it up like that. So that was kind of my, like, that's how I saw it, where you're getting like empty stadium, leftover garbage, walking alone, walking down, the stairs into the locker room in silhouette. Like, these are very sad, not even sad. They're very solitary, very lonely feeling things. Yeah. And once he gets to the players, they're sad too. So it builds on that, just so much sadness.
I'm rereading the speech just like as you're saying that, thinking about the movement of it. And I'm just reading lines like nothing can we call our own but death, and that small model of the barren earth which serves as paste and cover to our bones. And like, I know that high school sports are important, But the like the contrast of like losing a match to literally we we have nothing left on this earth besides our meat sacks that are dying. Like
Yeah. Like it just, that's why like when you first read it, I was like, this was my thought, but I was like, oh man, like I don't personally feel this way about high school or college football, but
there
I
are people
know
who do.
there are people who do, and again, it is such a powerful investment from the fans, from the players. Like I think that's why it resonates so much, because going to battle and losing, like you have so much to reconcile with yourself, and you can feel so gutted that I have nothing left, even though you like logically you do, and as you work through the grief you could get there, but in that moment you don't have anything. Like everything that you wanted is gone.
And you still have a team around you, and I think that's what this highlights. And it's something that I have never really experienced doing an individual sport.
Yes.
And I think I forget sometimes that teammates can be a good positive thing, because it does soften that blow. And really the true like conceit of this speech is to highlight the fact that no one person is better than those next to them, because death comes for us all, and we're all in this together. Sink or swim, or sink or sink. This is where we are. Those last couple lines are just so: throwaway respect, tradition, form, and ceremonious duty, for you have but mistook me all this while. I live with bread like you, feel want, taste grief, need friends. Subjected thus, how can you say to me I am a king? And God, there's something so freaking beautiful about this. The inclusion of need friends is what like this team makes me think of, because like we've got Shylock's famous if you prick us do we not bleed, that speech, like talking about the commonality of humans, but this need friends is such a powerful addition to that idea. And he's just one of the guys, and we see that in a team sport, in a way that I don't know what other modern parallel we really have. Obviously politics and stuff, like you've got that hierarchy of ranking officials, but like
I don't feel the same camaraderie. I don't feel, again,
right.
It's you have, aside from the actual military, I feel like the closest structure we have to that is especially large team sports, when you have a leader who is the coach or the captain, and then you have everybody else who is support, and all working towards the same goal.
Yeah. This is really a much more moving idea than I would have anticipated. We never really had, like, we had some pep rallies at my high school, but I skipped them all. And they weren't really, most people skipped them. Sports weren't really our high school thing, but like living down here, I still
honestly,
skip the pep rallies, but
yeah,
I've been to one and I hated it. It was so loud.
they're very loud. And I think it was an interesting thing. So again, I'm going to keep referencing Friday Night Lights, because I think it has some absolutely gorgeous moments. And I think they managed to present characters as adults, whose whole life is this high school football team, and they're not doing it in a making fun of that character way. Like, it's something where I was like, no, that doesn't make sense to me, because while I absolutely loved playing sports in high school, and I enjoy that I can still play tennis and I play pickup softball, like, I've never cared for it in the same way. Like, hey, we won this big game, and that's been the highlight of my life for the last 20 years. It hasn't been. I remember we won some really great games. I remember we lost some really tough games. I remember, our poor little tennis team beat the big coach bus tennis team. Like, that was cool. I couldn't tell you the scores.
Yeah.
I just remember I was like, no, it felt really good and I played well and that felt good. But with this, it is so woven into the fabric of the town and the fabric of the community and the legacy of it that you can still be critical of it, and some of the characters in the show are, but the show itself is not picking fun at people who care this much. And that was like, that's what I needed, because it wouldn't have landed so well if everybody was pointing and laughing at this as a silly way to be.
Right.
Because it's not. If this is what makes you happy, then go for it. Like, you're not hurting anyone. Who cares?
Yes.
But
yeah, I feel like we have a lot of that. Like, if people let people like things.
Let people like
let
things.
people like things that don't hurt anyone.
Yep.
Yeah. I'll yell it all day long. But yeah.
Oh wow.
I think it's nice. I think there's a fun parallel to be seen here. Outside of the traditional pass the crown football match type thing. And it's just this pep talk idea, especially because it does end so sad. Like, it's not really a pep talk, it's more of like a we're all in this together talk,
which is kind of one of those where, like, it is heartbreaking at that point, but it is a closure of some sort.
Yeah, it's over. The game can't change. It's not a halftime speech, it's an end time. We lost
the championship and we're done. Like, this is your senior year, or the school is changed. Like, this is the end. There is no more. But I think even in that, like, in that heartbreak, there is still some grace in what he is saying. But even just in the finality of it, where it's just, no, we've come to the end.
Yeah, I'm impressed. I think it's really sweet. And like I said, this is one of my favorite speeches. So getting to see it in an entirely new and different way is always so fun.
Did not realize I was going to get so emotional about football, because it's not usually my thing, but yeah.
You want to get more emotional?
Yes.
You want to see the most famous Richard II adaptation? I don't know if it's the most famous.
Yes.
It is David Tennant as Richard II with long hair.
Look at him with his beautiful hair.
Right?
Oh my gosh.
Like, what? Like, just some of these images are so stunning, and the costuming, and I just like, oh my God, I wanted to see it or I want to have gotten to see it so bad. His face is just so good.
Again, you talk about, and I think you see this a ton in Doctor Who, because that's what I've watched the most of him. Like, you watch when the Doctor isn't saying anything, just when Tennant is reacting, like, his face does so much.
Yeah.
And again, like, those are ones where I love watching it. To, like, also, he has a very unique face that is hard to capture.
Yes.
To make it look like him, but he's a great study in, like, okay, like, there is a playfulness to them, but there is a hidden rage, and, like, showing all that, and, like, oh God, he's so good. You're just so good.
He's so good.
He's so good.
Yeah. I want to be like David Tennant.
Okay, so all right, so here, this is what I'll say. Didn't he play Casanova? Like, isn't there an adaptation where he plays Casanova?
Casanova?
Because I feel like if you want mischievous playfulness,
yes, a mini series, Casanova mini series. Wait, because Casanova is what got him cast as the Doctor. What? Russell T Davies was so impressed by David Tennant's performance in Casanova that he cast him as the 10th Doctor. What is this? Peter O'Toole.
Yay. Yeah, so I've never watched it, but I feel like if you need mischievous inspiration, that Casanova is an excellent spot for that.
Oh my gosh. It's just, I know that he was so young.
Oh yeah, he's a baby. No.
Okay, I will save this to watch. That sounds so fun. I'm so excited to watch it. I don't know anything about Casanova. Like, just like the idea of a Casanova, like a suave.
Yeah. I know a tiny bit because Heath Ledger had a thing where he played. Oh, yes, please.
The image of them is just, I'm sorry,
nope, it's too good.
The tango. Oh man. Heath Ledger was a Casanova?
Mm-hmm. There's a version of Casanova with him. So like I know I've seen parts of that, but that's as much as I know. I think it's based on a book. It has to be.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I know Casanova Frankenstein from Mystery Men.
Which I haven't watched Mystery Men in so long.
I also haven't, but what a great film.
Just absolutely bonkers. And
I am the waffler, gold and crispy. Bad guys are history. Wow. That's so silly. What a great funny movie. Hank Azaria is
I adore him.
Yeah, absolute treasure.
I was talking about that recently because I threw on the Birdcage to have on in the background, which, you know, it's got some of its own problems, but honestly, like Robin Williams, Nathan Lane, Hank Azaria, like they are so good. Every time that I'm like, I love this movie so much.
I do not wear shoes because they make me fall down.
Agador Spartacus.
Agador Spartacus.
And one of my favorites is and then it's hard to pick, but when Nathan Lane is trying to act a little bit more butch and he's mimicking John Wayne, he's like, you get off your horse and you walk into the saloon. And then you've got Robin Williams looking at him and everything. He's like, no, it was really good. I just never noticed that John Wayne walked like that. And I was like, I just love all of this. It's so good.
I love that movie so much.
So
I want to watch that movie. I want to not do any of my responsibilities for the rest of today and watch that movie.
Oh, I feel that.
This is a cool one, Swan. I really like this perspective on this speech.
Yeah.
Yet again, you've done something that I never would have thought of in a million years. Yet again.
Yeah.
I don't think there's been any week that I'm like, oh yeah, I see that like that.
Like, oh yeah, this is exactly how I would have cast it.
Oh yeah.
But
Rock Glam Macbeth. Nailed it.
It's so good. It's so fun. Well, I like it. Again, I think if you ever needed further proof that Shakespeare was incredibly accessible, even beyond its language, like it fits and I can see it just from listening to you talk about it and explain it to me. So
thank you all for being here. Thanks for hanging out today. Sorry, it was a little brain wonky from me.
Words are hard.
Words are so hard.
It's been a really crazy September. The fact that we made it to this is really good.
Yes, honestly. And we're so happy that you're all here with us. Thank you for watching. We're gonna do third week in October.
Yeah, like 23rd, I think.
What is that?
23rd or 24th?
Sunday. The 17th is the third Sunday, or we can.
Oh, I lied. Oh, yeah. Let's do the 24th.
Okay.
I lied. Yeah,
that sounds perfect. Yeah, five Sundays in October. Yes. Spicy month. Yeah, join us in October. Hit us up on Twitter at a swan named Emily or at Kruggles or P2M Pod and tell us what speeches to do. Give us some shouts. Give us questions that you have about art and Shakespeare. Tell them to us. Ask them to us.
Yes.
Maybe don't ask about your 8-year-old girlfriend, but anything else?
Mostly fair game.
Fair game. Let me tell you a question. Oh, Steve. Oh, no. Oh, no. Hit end broadcast. Quickly, Swan. Quickly.